Ladies and gentlemen, the following segment of the podcast is presented exclusively by Hillsdale College, now in its 175th year. Hillsdale is a truly independent institution where learning is prized and intellectual enthusiasm is valued. Thank you for listening, and my sincere appreciation to Hillsdale for their sponsorship.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. First, I have a message for you, and then I want to get into this hearing today over the coronavirus, the Democrats, the media. Then we will swing back into the coup d'etat that took place in this country, and really is still taking place. I received a very brief call today, more of a social call than anything else, nothing substantive discussed, by General Michael Flynn. And he wanted me to tell this audience in particular, you, Levinites, thank you. Thank you. He said, you folks in this audience, when I asked you to support his effort so he could defend himself, General Flynn said made a huge difference in the life of his family and, of course, his own life. And he didn't elaborate, but he said it was absolutely important and crucial. And I want to thank you, too. I have the most patriotic, intelligent audience of any audience, really. People who are concerned, people who are engaged. And this is why I am blessed every day to be here with you. And you decide whether I'm here or not, whether it's AM, FM radio, satellite radio, podcast radio, Levin TV, Fox, you decide. And we know that people in the Obama administration pushed for, and at least one did in fact, unmask illegally, in fact a felony, the name of an American citizen, specifically Michael Flynn, to David Ignatius, a left-wing columnist at the Washington Post, who was picked up doing a wiretap of the then Russian ambassador to the United States, Kislyak. And this sort of thing happens all the time, and you're not supposed to leak the person's name. That's why it's a felony. So Flynn was targeted. He was targeted by Obama. I'll get into more of this later. And I'm not going to tolerate any more of this idea that Obama's above the fray and poor Obama didn't know anything. Baloney. Obama has a very sickening habit of destroying people, whether it was his Senate opponent in Illinois, where they went after the sealed divorce records of the candidate, and that candidate was leading Obama, and then Obama would eventually win with 70% of the vote, and other sleaze activity by Obama and his supporters. That's the nature of the hard left. That's the nature of Obama. And more on that later. We're also going to discuss a $3 trillion bill that Nancy Pelosi wrote in her office that is 1,850 pages long, that has not yet been made available. I can't find it. She's now ordered members to come back on Friday so they can vote, and she calls this the HEROES Act. The heroes will be the individuals who vote against this. She wrote it. No committee, no hearings, no input from you, the American people, through your representatives. No involvement. She's a fascist. And so she calls back the House for the purpose of voting. And not a single media outlet, single newsroom, has focused on her unconstitutional activity. Not one. Not one. We've spent $2.2 trillion, $500 billion Over $4 trillion in loans. I mean, I'm losing count of this stuff. And it's made virtually no difference at all. And she wants to pay, she says, the rent, the utilities, the mortgages, the salaries. She wants $1 trillion for the states and cities, which, of course, they'll use to pay down debt they created long before this virus. And it goes on and on and on. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to focus on Dr. Fauci and his testimony today. And I want to focus on today and this word, testing. Testing. The media keeps focusing on testing. We got to have tests. I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that Dr. Anthony Fauci has been the director of the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases for 36 years. 36 years. The early testing failures were said to be that of the Center for Disease Control, CDC. Dr. Fauci could have easily banged the pots and pans and set off the alarms about the ineffective or defective testing that we had in place should there be a pandemic. He did no such thing. In fact, on 3 separate occasions at the end of January, and we've played all of them, whether on Newsmax or CNBC or the Castamedas podcast, Fauci downplayed this virus and compared it in more ways than one to a bad flu, and told the American people they don't have anything to fear. Don't worry. And, of course, the media regurgitated what Fauci said. Whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, or CBS, or ABC, or NBC, all of them. And multiple times. And Newsbusters has that montage if you wish to look at their website. Testing, we're told, is critical. And yet, those authorities that have been in place for decades and decades, the scientists, the public health professionals, the doctors, got it wrong. Very badly wrong. At the same time, Dr. Fauci was getting it wrong, and the CDC was getting it wrong, and the others were getting it badly wrong. Mitt Romney was demanding witnesses in the Senate impeachment trial, as did every single Democrat in the Senate, celebrated and supported by every single Democrat but one in the House, as well as every single Democrat dressed up as a journalist on virtually every newsroom in the country. While the virus was making its way into the United States. So the CDC did not have an effective test. Dr. Fauci was telling the American people, don't sweat it, it's like the flu. The Democrats in the House and the Senate, led by Schumer and Pelosi, among others, were telling us to focus on John Bolton, among others. If we wanted to defend our Constitution, of course. And today we have a hearing. A hearing. And 4 individuals who serve in the top public health positions in the country, 4 of them, testified. Not in person, but from various locations around Washington, D.C. But I want to focus on Dr. Fauci. I don't know how Dr. Fauci does it. The man's about 80 years old. There's only 24 hours in the day, 7 days a week. And the man is in the media more than anybody I've ever seen. More than Lindsey Graham. More than Michael Avenatti. Considering all the data that comes in from all over the world, let alone within the United States, all the models that have been so wrong all these months, and all the information that a scientist, a doctor, and a public health professional needs to take into consideration. How is it that Dr. Fauci has so much time? I wish I had Dr. Fauci on now. I interviewed him early on. As I look back at this, I really do. And Dr. Fauci insists he's just following the science and giving his advice. And the media insists that we all follow Dr. Fauci, despite his horrific record over the last 3 or 4 months. There are other experts out there with resumes deeper than Dr. Fauci's who haven't worked in one place for 36 years, but have worked in many places with many expertises and many backgrounds. Whether it's the group in Stanford, whether it's the doctors in Oxford, the doctors at Yale, the doctors at the Rockefeller College, a research college, and on and on and on. I've presented many of them to you. They don't think Dr. Fauci's right at all. They don't think he's following the science. But the Democrats and the media do not care. Now, what is it that Dr. Fauci wants? Dr. Fauci says his concern is, quote, that we have a quick opening, unquote, and a recurrence of the virus in a way that kills many people. And yet there are scientists, medical experts throughout the country with significant experience and background in this field who say if we do have a recurrence, it's thanks to Fauci. It's thanks to Fauci and his early decisions and advice to the president. Sending children and college students home to their parents and grandparents, exactly the wrong thing to do. Having children and college students around each other. Because the likelihood that they would die from this virus is almost, not exactly, as likely getting hit with lightning. And so the virus doesn't have a chance to work through the bodies of those who can at least, based on the data and the science, handle it, certainly handle it much better, and kill it. That hasn't happened. So the old and the sick will still be vulnerable. And so when you begin to open up the economy, those people, younger people, healthy people, who didn't get the virus, many are likely to get the virus, and then when they go home to their parents and their grandparents, and then when they interact with the elderly and so forth, then you're going to see an increase in deaths. Specifically because of the mitigation and quarantine procedures urged even to this day by Dr. Anthony Fauci. Typically what you do is you quarantine the elderly and you quarantine the sick to protect them. You don't quarantine everybody. Now our economy is being destroyed. It is being destroyed, and the Democrats are gleeful. Oh, they have a $3 trillion bill this time and a $2.2 trillion bill before and a $500 billion bill before that and a $380 billion bill before that. They got all kinds of trillions that they're going to print and push into the economy. They're going to kill this economy. They're going to destroy this country. But for them, it's okay, because the more you kill this economy, the more you destroy this country, as you see, the less adherence there is to our Constitution. It's not even in the conversation. The Bill of Rights. What Bill of Rights? We're trying to save your lives. Follow the science. Follow the science. I can't think of a better phrase for any dictator in the world. Can you, Mr. Producer? Follow the science. I'm telling you what the science is. Follow it. Do what I tell you. The science says you don't get to pray on Sundays together. The science says we're going to shut our gun stores. The science says I can decide who and what is essential and who and what is not.